For the past 5+ years, I've been using the Rokinon 35T15 Cine lens, and it was a fantastic starter lens, and I've done a lot of really cool projects with it, and the majority of my YouTube videos were shot on it. But as I've been progressing in my career, I wanted to take the next step and upgrade my main lens. Now, of course, I would love to go all out for a Atlas anamorphic, but $8,000 for a single lens was a little bit out of the price range. So I wanted to find something for around $1,000. Now, I spent a good 4 or 5 months looking at all the different options out there, everything from Zeiss Milvis to Sigma Art Series. I was looking at some vintage lenses that had a lot of character to them. I heavily debated the SLR Magic APO microprimes, or whatever they're called, for EF mounts. Those I actually really like, and I don't think that would have been a bad option either. But I kept seeing this company called IRIX pop up, and I kind of always have this like sweet spot for new companies or newer brands, and they've been doing photography lenses for quite some time now, and they're really sharp and really good lenses. Amazing reviews that I've always seen from them. And then I believe last year they started their Cine lens line with a macro, and then they added an 11mm, and then late last year they added this 45mm T15 Cine lens. And actually just like last week, they added a 15mm. So I really like seeing that they are expanding the lineup, taking it seriously. And the few reviews I saw, there literally are like 4 videos on these lenses that exist on YouTube. So this hopefully will be like number 5 on their Cine lenses. So yeah, I took a chance and I went with the 45mm T15, and I just want to talk about my first impressions after having it for about a week. Let's dive into it. Now, a couple weekends ago when I actually bought this lens, it was on sale for just over $1,000. Normally I think it's $1,100 or $1,200, so it hovers around the price point that I wanted to stick to. Basically, some of the key characteristics that I was looking for in a new lens was, of course, I wanted something Cine style, so it has the focus gears. The front of the lens is a 95mm diameter to fit a Cine professional matte box, and their entire Cine lineup is the same. Of course, they're all the same aperture and focus ring, so when I set up my focus motor, I don't have to move it if I were to change lenses as I get the new ones down the road. I also wanted something that was really sharp. As I've moved up to 6K, my old Rokinon, although it had a cinematic look to it, which can be a more softer look, I really wanted to feel like I had an actual 6K camera, because if I would punch in 2 times 400%, whatever, on the old Rokinon, it was really soft. At 4K seemed to really be the near max to the resolution of what that lens could handle. IRIX advertises all their lenses at 8K ready, and I knew from their photography lenses that they have really sharp pieces of glass, and I am not disappointed. This thing is crazy sharp. So looking at the footage, it honestly really feels like I have a whole new camera, or at least I'm finally taking advantage of everything that the Pocket 6K has to offer. Really good highlight roll off was also super important to me, and thankfully this has that. We're going to touch upon that in a minute. Now, I spent a good solid week when I finally chose that I'm going to go with IRIX. I was debating between the 11, the 150, and the 45. Again, the 15 didn't exist yet at that point. And what ultimately made me choose the 45 is the fact that it's T1.5. The macro lens is like T 3.5 or something, and the 11 is like 4.3. And so I wanted the ability to shoot in lower light situations. And in low light, this thing really doesn't disappoint. Here's some night shots, and even one of these shots like this one was shot at 25,600 ISO. So that's pretty crazy. Obviously that's a little more on the camera side, but you can still see that the lens keeps things as sharp as it can. Obviously I've applied some noise reduction. Here's it off just so you can get a sense, and back on. So yeah, this thing can handle low light like a boss. The build quality is also amazing. I mean, this thing is solid metal. It feels like a real Cine lens. It is quite heavy. I think it's around 2 pounds. And so if you're used to really light rigs, this one is gonna be an awakening. Also, something that wasn't super important to me but is a nice bonus is the weatherproofing. So this is fully weather sealed, just like a lot of photography lenses. So if you get caught out in the rain, the lens will be totally fine. My camera won't, but the lens will. All right, so now let's talk about the negative features of the hardware. Now the first one is kind of controversial because it's not negative for me, but every other review I've read, they don't really like it, is the magnetic hood. So if you're a matte box user, then you can kind of just ignore this part and it doesn't really matter. If you like to use the included lens hood, then just so you know, it doesn't rotate and lock like every other lens that exists out there. This one actually uses a magnet. Now, a lot of the reviews say the magnet isn't nearly strong enough and that it comes off.
The magnets are not strong on this at all. So I'm finding it, trying to get it back into place. Okay, it's locked, but with very minimal effort, it just slides right off. This has fallen off on us.
Now, a couple of those people had like pre-production or review units that may have been a lot softer, and I have not had that experience at all. This thing seems as solid as I would expect it to be. Another reviewer said, yeah, definitely don't be lifting it up by your lens hood. I personally don't know anyone who lifts their lens up by the lens hood. I would never recommend that anyway. So yes, it's not strong enough to lift the lens by the lens hood. You're definitely going to drop it at that point. But having it on there, I've never had it fall off, move, shake, or anything. So I actually think it's a genius idea. I love the magnetic lens hood, but you may not, just so you know. Okay, I forgot to say something. So I literally am editing the video that you're watching right now, and the lighting's changed a little bit in the back, but that's fine. So there's a review of this lens that literally just went up 3 days ago where someone still doesn't like the lens hood as much, but he pointed out a really cool fact that I didn't know. So the reason that IRIX did the whole magnetic lens hood thing is actually to benefit people who want to use different types of matte box and filters. You see, if they use the traditional rotating lock thing, then the front part of the element couldn't be perfectly smooth, so that, what are they called? Stick on? Like push on? The matte boxes that essentially just slide on, whatever. Matte boxes that just slide on to the front of the lens element, easy enough. If you had the rotating lock lens hood, that wouldn't work. And then if you had the threaded lens hood, then you wouldn't have the internal threads, the properly sized for lens filters. So since they realized that probably most people who use a Cine lens aren't going to rely on the lens hood that's included, you get a matte box and you get internal threads to use on filters. So I stand by this magnetic lens hood thing is freaking genius idea. Thanks, IRIX. Again, the weight, if you are already close to maxing out your gimbal, my setup's already pretty crazy, so adding this lens onto my Fiotech AK-4500, I don't think that's gonna work at all. I think I'm gonna end up having to upgrade to the new Lab Crane 3S, whatever it's called, that is like insane for cinema cameras. But yeah, this thing is really heavy, so if you're a gimbal user, a Steadicam operator, just keep in mind that this thing is like a true Cine lens. It's heavy. Now this is both a pro and a con, but the lens has a 180-degree focus throw. What that simply means is from its closest focus point to infinity is 180 degrees on the lens. Now that's a pro because you can get in there and really fine focus and fine tune it. So essentially a little bit goes a long way in the movements. But again, if you're trying to focus rack really quick from something near and far, something like a Nucleus Nano struggles to keep up. I will essentially move the Nano focus wheel and it will take kind of a second to lag to really go from one end to the other. For normal stuff, you don't have any issues. Like if this was handheld and I was just moving around a little bit, I wouldn't have any issues keeping up with that focus. But also, even if you're not using a focus motor and just using your hand, you're really going to be spinning it a lot to get there. Again, if you're used to cine lenses, that's pretty much the way it goes, but it's something to keep in mind if you're new to the realm. Piggybacking off of that, the focus is really fine. Right now I'm on T4, so that way I can, move a little bit and I'm still relatively remaining in focus. But especially if you're trying to shoot at like T1.5, the focus plane is razor thin. Again, that mixed with the focus throw, if I was sitting here at T1.5 and I literally moved like 2 inches this way, I'd be totally out of focus, and same thing the other way. So it's been taking quite a bit of practice shooting every single day to nail focus on certain things. So keep that in mind as well. Now, after playing with this for the past week, again, this absolutely achieves the look that I was going for. I wanted something that was crazy sharp. I wanted something that had really good highlight roll off. You can see here shooting straight into the sun that this thing flares so minimally and really nicely. Even at T22, you're not getting that crazy like star effect that I get on my cheaper lenses. And really taking this thing out on super bright days, it just really retains that highlight information really well, allowing me to bring it down or do whatever I want with it in post. I also really like how it looks on skin tones. Of course, the look of a lens a lot of the times is very subjective. So again, if you like a lot of character just going through your lens, then this one may not be for you. This is the perfect lens if you're looking for a modern, sharp digital kind of look, but still cinematic in the sense that, like, again, my cheaper Canon lens, for example, that's a like digital camcorder type look where the highlights can look very harsh and almost jagged lines and just has a different feel. This definitely has that cinematic look to it, but it's like the modern, sharp digital cinematic look. These are the things that are like impossible to put into words. And one of the last things that you'll see on their feature page that I never thought I'd care about until really looking into it and now using it is the low focus breathing. Now, if you don't know what that is, I'm going to show a sample from another creator here because he has 2 different lenses that are really kind of dramatically different, so you'll be able to see it better. But essentially, when you change focus from something really close again to really far, it almost looks like the lens is actually zooming in and out because you have all the glass elements moving. And generally, the more expensive lens you get, especially in cine lines of things, is you have little to no focus breathing. That's why you'd never really notice a focus pull in a Hollywood movie, is because it doesn't look like the entire image is moving in and out. Now, you don't really see this in lenses at this price point, so I was kind of surprised that they were boasting it as a feature, but it really is true. It definitely still has some breathing to it, but you can see here in comparison to my cheaper Canon lens, the edge of my scrim, essentially, as I change the focus plane, you can see more and less of it. And then when I use the IRIX lens, has a lot less movement. So I think that's going to translate really well as I'm shooting narratives and different films. Now, this is missing one key feature again for my look. Again, I wanted something sharp, but I really wanted a little bit of characteristics so that my projects can stand out and be unique. And so that is going to be the Dream FX filter by Prism FX when that shows up, hopefully in the next week or 2. It's kind of like a black pro mist or what's it called, Hollywood something filter, and basically it just kind of blooms the highlights a little bit more, makes it a little bit more dreamy, and I really like that look. Sometimes I add it to my videos in DaVinci Resolve using like lens reflections and glows. I think the mixture of how sharp this lens is and adding a little bit of bloom highlights and a little bit more characteristics with that filter is going to make this the perfect combination for me. Let me know what questions or thoughts on this lens down below. Again, I know there's very little content about this lens online, so I'm happy to answer any of those questions for you. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.